This is a 2019 Buick LaCrosse, and it's my 2019 Buick LaCrosse. Okay, so I know that this video is probably going to raise a lot of eyebrows for you guys because for the most part, you guys are enthusiastic about electric cars, and I gotta be honest, I am too. And you might think that this recent purchase begs to differ. So I guess I'm going to answer a few questions before I actually get into the full tour of this car and explain to you why I bought this 2019 Buick LaCrosse. So for those of you who have watched this channel for a long time, you guys know that I've really been wanting to buy a Tesla. I've been so enthusiastic about them, and I have my gripes about them if I'm being honest, but that was the car that I actually wanted to buy next. I wanted my next car to be a Tesla Model 3, except something happened between then and now, obviously, because I ended up buying this car. And what happened was not actually Tesla's fault. If anything, Tesla keeps improving and actually makes me want to buy their cars even more. From the looks of it, they brought back the long-range Model 3 finally, because that was the car that I was going to get. It had to be the long-range model. But from the sounds of it, when they brought it back, it looks like that they've switched it to an LFP battery pack, which only means good news for me. That and the prices keeps coming down. They got the tax credit and everything, which personally I fully disagree with. I do not like the idea of the tax credit, but it exists, I guess. So if anything, Tesla keeps improving their chances on me buying their car sooner, but obviously that didn't happen. So why did I buy this car instead of the Model 3? Well, the reason why I ended up buying this was a result of Red Fox, actually. I've made videos in the past on how I've been absolutely angry at Red Fox and how she's been hogging my wallet just due to so many repairs. And yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to buy a Tesla in the first place. I made that video over a year ago when I mentioned I wanted to switch to electric. And it's because electric cars generally are much more reliable in terms of parts breaking and such. And that's because there's not much in electric cars to break. And that's why I wanted to switch. And Red Fox only really emphasized how much I wanted to switch to electric because of that reason. But unfortunately, I still don't have enough money. Even before I bought this car, I still did not have enough money to even finance a Tesla. I could not afford one if I wanted to buy one at this point. I was really hoping Red Fox would be able to carry me until the Tesla, except that just is not happening. The problem is I need my car to do more than it currently is, and Red Fox for the most part has got me from point A to point B around town, well, with some concerning reliability, but it still got me from point A to point B, despite that every single time I drove it, I thought something was going to break real fast. And also the gas mileage in that car really sucked. I was averaging 16 miles a gallon with a light foot, and I do not drive with a light foot, so that means I am getting terrible gas mileage in that car, which is seriously not helping when, in terms of the general area I am, gas isn't California expensive up here, but it's kind of getting a little close if I'm being honest. And unfortunately, I'm going to be taking a trip in about a month, which I'll do my best to actually film a video on me taking a road trip. I've always wanted to do that. Problem is, I've had so many other people take a trip with me, and those people do not like getting on camera, so it makes that extremely difficult to do. But luckily this time, the road trip will be me and my sister, and my sister does like getting on camera. So I'm going to do my best to film a road trip video with this car. But the point was, I had a road trip coming up, and I do not trust Red Fox to actually take me further than outside of town. It may have been fairly okay going around town here, but the problem is the speed limits are not that fast. Like the maximum speed limit that people will drive around here is around 60 miles an hour, but I gotta hit up I-75, and let's just say the speed limits there are much faster than that. And last time I took Red Fox on a road trip, it was down I-43 to Sheboygan in Wisconsin, and let's just say Red Fox did not like that at all. So because of that, I was basically left in a really bad position where I needed to take my car, and my car is not capable enough to do what I need. And the problem is, yeah, I wanted the Tesla, and the Tesla would solve all of these issues. Problem is, that's a purchase in the future. I'm doing this stuff now. I can't wait to do this stuff. I'm already doing it now. So because of that, I ended up needing to buy a new car, and this is the car I ended up buying. So what does this mean in terms of getting the Tesla at this point? Because I I still have full plans to get it, by the way. That purchase is going to end up being a little more delayed because I gotta make payments on this now to pay off the financing, but hey, at least I got a car that is way better than Red Fox at this point. I needed a holdover car, and this is going to be the best holdover car I would ever get. I'm so grateful I found this, if I'm being honest, and you'll understand why when eventually, well, I'll give you a tour around this in this video, but in the next video, I'm going to compare this directly with Red Fox and compare the feature sets and how technology has changed in the automotive industry. So yes, I ended up buying another gas car. I genuinely am not excited about that aspect of it, but this was something that had to be done, and I hope I can ensure you guys that this purchase is for the better. It's not an electric car. Well, it is a hybrid technically. More on that in a bit. But for the most part, this is another gas car and it's not fully electric. But just so you guys know, I am still in support of the electric vehicle. I am not giving up on electric, despite that the charging industry, it is getting more interesting. I still got to get up on the news on what happened with GM recently. But for the most part, I still want to switch to electric, and my mindset is all ready to switch to electric. Problem right now is financials. I do not have the finances to get me there just yet. So this will be my holdover car for the time until I do get the Tesla, and maybe I won't sell this after it, because actually when I give you a full tour of this, I'm going to explain to you how much I really like this thing. Despite that, yes, it is another gas car. So alright, enough of my explainer as of why I bought this. Let's give you a full tour of the Buick LaCrosse. I'm going to start off up front here, as I usually do when it comes to all of my car reviews. And I'm going to talk about styling and various other elements of the car as always. So first up, we're going to start up here in front of the grille. When the third generation Buick LaCrosse, which this is, came out in 2017, Buick really decided to revamp their styling design, and it was a great decision because this thing is beautiful. It is handsome. I love everything about this design. From its still keeping its waterfall grille, that's a common Buick traditional design element, but they brought back the tricolor shield insignia with red in the bottom shield, white in the center one here, and then blue on the left. I love that they brought this back. It just really helps the design. And then they brought this chrome wing to span across it. I love what Buick did with this. It's absolutely designed beautifully. And then of course we turn up to the headlights here, where I'm so glad that I'm finally getting an upgrade in the lighting department. If you guys didn't know this, Red Fox's lights are so dim. Daytime running LEDs right here, LED turn signals, HID headlights, and then I also have some halogen fog lights down here too. This is a good lighting setup. Other than the halogen bulbs down there, seriously guys, we should be switching away from halogens. But I will admit, I love the LEDs that they got up here. The HID seems to be fairly bright actually. Not complaining about that though. I wish it was still full LED. HID and LED are not the same type of light, but I'll take HIDs over halogens. In terms of what's under the hood in here, I did mention that this was a hybrid at the beginning of this video. Because of that, typically most of the LaCrosses are not going to be the hybrid model. They're going to be the V6 model with the 3.6 liter V6. Obviously, this is a hybrid model, so it has a completely different engine in it. It's got a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder assisted by an electric motor. I do not know the specs of the electric motor, but I do know that this is a mild hybrid powertrain. And I gotta say, it's a really nice setup, and something that I love about this powertrain, it is so quiet. You'll be able to hear that when we go for the drive. I have to admit, for the base 18-inch wheels that are on this vehicle, this is a pretty sweet design. I love the looks of these wheels. It fits the design of the car very well. And also in traditional Buick fashion, they have to have their signature port vents right here on the side of the vehicle. Back in the day, these used to have an actual meaning. The number of port vents actually represented which engine you had in the car. So because there's vents here on this side and also set on the other side, by the way, these are fake, just so you know. Because there are 3 vents here on this side, plus 3 on the other side, that would indicate that you had a 6-cylinder engine under the hood. Well, apparently that means nothing to Buick anymore, because I have a 4-cylinder under the hood paired with an electric motor, and yet this is the markings for having a 6-cylinder. It was the case with 8 cylinders too. If you had an 8-cylinder engine under the hood, you'd have 4 of these. Yours have turn signals in them. That's nice. Usually with the sedan, I do not have to place the camera so far back and speak this loudly, but this is a full-size sedan, and not only is it just a full-size sedan, this has to be the longest full-size sedan in its class. I'm walking all the way around to the back here, and this feels roughly about the same length as my mom's GMC Yukon. This thing is not short in dimension by any stretch of the imagination. Though I do have to say, the side profile of this, it looks pretty sweet if I'm being honest. So despite that I'm liking the design of this car a lot already, I do have a couple complaints with it. One fairly major, the other just minor because it's all design subjective stuff. But let's start off with the major complaint that I have. Notice which side of the vehicle I'm on. This is the passenger side. Why is the fuel door here on the passenger side? It should be on the driver's side. This is bad design. The driver is over there, and the driver is typically the one who fuels up the car. So logic, please. At least it's capless. And then we come to my other complaint with the car, and it's the rear design. It's not that pretty, actually. It does not look good at all, in my opinion. It does not do the front justice. The front end is the end that you want to see, and well, this is the end that you're typically going to see. It's the back end of this, and it does not look pretty. But design aside, I still actually have some problems back here, and it's mostly the lighting. When the car is on, I shut it off at the moment. There's an LED running light on the back end of the taillight here, but the rest of the bulbs are all halogen, as you might notice. These are halogen turn signals, and the reverse light is also halogen, not LED. And one other complaint that I have that I am going to start harping on every automaker out there. Turn signals do not belong in the brake light. They should never be the same light bulb. Brake lights should always be red. Turn signals should always be amber, including in the rear. Fix that, GM. So despite my gripes with the rear, there is one thing about the rear that I actually do like and really wish that all sedans had this, because unfortunately not every sedan has this. I hate how for the past how many years I've been alive, my family has always owned sedans where if you want to pop the trunk, you have to pull out the key or go inside the car and push a button to pop the trunk. In this car, push the bottom of the Buick logo and the trunk pops right open. Speaking of the trunk, let's actually talk about its features while we're back here anyways. So in terms of the actual space, it's about 15 cubic feet of space, which is average for your typical trunk. You'd think this is a huge sedan. It's got to have a large trunk in it. Well, actually all that room went to the back seats. So this has your fairly standard sized trunk. Well, unless you get the hybrid. See, as I mentioned, this is the hybrid model. And because of that, it's got a battery pack and it has to go somewhere. And they put it here as a big lump in the trunk. It's not that big, but there's still a big lump in the trunk for batteries packed. So there's slightly less space than what you'd get in the V6 model, all because they got to make room for that high voltage battery somewhere. And also, I should probably point out, where's the low voltage battery? It's actually right here under this cover. So basically Buick is keeping all the batteries to the vehicle in the trunk. You'd think, this being a big vehicle, they'd have room to put it somewhere else, but nope, hogging your cargo space, I guess. But if those batteries really are hogging too much of your cargo space and you need to expand, well, don't worry, have no fear, because you have these pull tabs here that will fold the seats down. By the way, the seats fold 60-40 split. Why is this not a standard thing in every sedan? Because you got to admit, there's a lot of cargo capacity in here right now. And then 3 more details I gotta point out about the trunk. Unfortunately, nothing to cover these beams here, so you better make sure that these don't crush your cargo. There is no powered trunk available. I kind of wish there was, but no power trunk available. And the last thing that it has, a little assist grip here to help you close it. Before we move inside the vehicle to explore all the quirks and features in there, I wanted to touch on one more detail on the outside. Paint color. Buick calls this pepper dust metallic. But when it comes to trying to describe the color of this car to legal services, well, pepper dust metallic means nothing to them. You have to describe it as black, white, blue, red, so the generic color. And that's a weird thing about this car. It's really hard to tell what color this actually is. In some lights, it looks gray. In others, it looks tan. In others, it looks gold. In others, it looks brown. It's such a strange color with this car. It's one of the reasons why I bought it. Geez, when it comes to reporting this to legal surfaces to describe what color of your car it looks like, gotta admit, that's a little bit of a challenge when you have pepper dust metallic. All right, enough dilly-dallying on the outside. Let's actually get in the car now. Before we do that, I actually have one more thing to describe, and it is related to getting inside the car. This is the key to get in the car. It's Buick's latest design key fob, and I gotta admit, this is a really stellar looking key fob. I love the design of it. It's simple, and actually, I like how they integrate the lock button into the design. It's the Buick logo. That's how you lock the car. But for the most part, I found you're basically never going to need this key other than to turn off the panic alarm. That's basically it. Because this has passive entry, where basically I can push a button here on the side of the door and it locks the car. I push that button again, unlocks the car. Push the button, locks the car. Push the button again, unlocks the car. You never need the key anymore. Not even to pop the trunk because it's got that button at the Buick logo back there. All right, enough talk about keys and such. Let's actually get in and start talking about the interior. I'm first gonna start off the interior section by just saying, wow, this is one beautifully designed interior. Everything looks stunning and the material selection in this is actually great. Starting on the door panel, you got soft touch materials on top, like mostly soft touch plastics on top by the window. Down below you have some fake wood and a real aluminum trim. This is real aluminum, by the way. Below that you have some more padded plastics and such, and then you finally get to leather, which, oh, the leather in here feels so good, not gonna lie. Then when you go up to the dash, you got basically more soft touch plastics above, and then once you start going below, well, you got more wood here on the passenger side in the dash as well as over here. Then you got some more cheap plastic, in my opinion, around the display and such. And then below that, that's when you get into the really nice materials. You get leather all over here on this portion, which is a common area you might touch, and it wraps the center console beautifully. In between here, you have a piano black plastic, something that everyone who hates fingerprints despises, taking up a portion of the center console here. And then you also have some wood trim surrounding your cup holders and various other bits of the center console. Overall, I really love the design and the materials in this car. It's so nice. I feel like I bought a luxury car, if I'm being honest. There is one design complaint that I do have inside the interior here. It's actually the steering wheel itself. Kind of like how the rear design doesn't really complement the front design that much. The steering wheel here doesn't really complement the rest of the interior. It's just really hard for me to look at. It just doesn't feel like it belongs in here. But it is a nice 4-spoke design with your cruise control settings and such, and actually there's paddle shifters on here to cycle through the transmission. More on that in a sec. The steering wheel, to my surprise though, despite that it does not have heating, that's actually, you have to step up to a higher model. By the way, this is the Essence model of the Buick LaCrosse. The trim structure for the Buick LaCrosse is you have the base, you have the Preferred, the Essence, and then the Premium. And because this is 2019 and they came out with the new trim back in 2018, you have the Avenir line as well. So this is about middle of the pack in terms of equipment and trim levels. So this is middle of the pack car, and it's really nice if I'm being honest. And to my surprise, I thought that this was reserved for Premium and Avenir models, but the Essence model does get this too. It's the gauge cluster design. The tachometer, fuel, and temperature gauges are still analog, but everything else in the gauge cluster is digital. And I gotta admit, I really like it, though I do have one complaint with the speedometer. Thank goodness you can change it. My problem with the gauge cluster is the speedometer. They picked such a high top speed to display in the speedometer that it actually makes the speeds that you typically drive at really hard to discern at the bottom. So because of that, I end up having to have a digital readout on the gauge cluster so that way I can actually figure out what speed I'm going, because they cram it all down in one corner of the speedometer. Because what did they pick for top speed in this? 170 miles an hour? Who's driving a hybrid luxury vehicle at 170 miles an hour? But also, because this is the hybrid model, this actually has a difference in the gauge cluster compared to the standard V6 model. Within that display inside the right circle, typically on the V6 models, you'll see your battery voltage as the 12-volt battery voltage. I don't know why they feel the need to display that, but they do. But in the hybrid model, they actually have another gauge there that monitors power flow in the hybrid electrical system. It shows you whether it's taking energy out of the battery pack or if it's putting it back in. I did not expect this thing to have regen braking, but this does have regen braking. Coming below the gauges, we have a button to actually start the engine this time, and actually there's a unique quirk to this button. It's not actually circular like you see in basically every other automobile. It's a parallelogram of sorts. So interesting start-stop button, but hey, it's push button start, which is way better than what I had in my last car. Back to the doors, however, I touched on materials about that, but we also have memory seats on this car, 2-person memory, as well as an easy exit function, which really helps because I discovered in this car, in my driving position, the steering wheel actually comes so low that I can't get my right knee out. It's currently an easy exit right now, but the steering wheel comes so low in my driving position, I can't get my right knee out, so I have to bring up the steering wheel, which, by the way, it's power tilt and telescoping, by the way, so that way I can actually get out of the car easier. I've got room for my knee to get out. Below that, we have our mirror controls as well as our window controls as well. And actually, I did a quick window test on this. Here's what scores in the window test. Driver and front passenger windows, they are fully automatic, while the rear windows are only auto down. You still have to hold the switch to get those rear windows to come on back up. And also, there's a little storage pocket here with a cup holder. So you can fit a bottle of water there with your trunk button right on the door as well. Storage, by the way, let's actually touch on that. Again, the doors have storage pockets in them. We got a nice center console here that I've got filled with stuff at the moment. I got my dash cam that I actually have to hang up on the windshield. It's not the biggest center console out there. Like maybe I could fit an iPad mini in there if I wanted to. But inside you got a little removable tray to clean it out if it gets a little dusty in there. You have 2 USB ports and an aux jack along with a 12-volt outlet for power. So power connections are very massively upgraded. In front of that you have a wireless charger, so if your phone fits in it, which my iPhone XS Max does, you can shove that in here and it'll wirelessly charge your phone. Nice. Up in front of that we have a little pocket here, I assume maybe for coins or something. There's not really much you can fit in this pocket, but it's there, I guess. Then we have this lid to reveal your cup holders, which there are 2 of here. But then if you take a look underneath the center console here, there's a pass-through. You can actually fit stuff underneath the center console, and just like beneath the center armrest, there's a removable tray here, so that way if you want to clean out the dust and dirt and grime that gets in there, well, that just got a lot easier. So all of this storage in here is possible thanks to an electronic shifter, which I know there are a lot of people that absolutely hate these things. Get used to it, because a lot of electric cars actually use electronic shifters because there's not really that many electric cars out there that don't have them. But this electronic shifter is rather interesting in terms of operation. It's this joystick that you get here, and to put the car in drive, you put your foot on the brake, obviously, and then there's a side button that you use to engage the shifter. Pull it down to put it in drive, pull it down again to put it in manual mode, and use the paddle shifters to shift through the transmission's 9 gears. And then if you want to go into neutral, push the button again and push and hold it for a bit. I discovered you have to hold it. You have to push and hold it forward. That'll put the car in neutral. And to put it in reverse, push the button again, push forward and to the left. That puts the car in reverse. And then to put it in park, you just push the P button on top. Up in front of that, we've got a traction control off button and a parking sensors button, and this really big button here to display that my car is missing a whole bunch of options because this is not the highest end LaCrosse here. Typically right here, you'd find other safety systems like lane keep assist and park assist and such, but I don't have those in this car. So I just get a blank plastic piece right here. And speaking of blank plastic pieces, if we go up to the climate controls here, you might notice there are 2 more blank plastic pieces here. That's because those pieces would have your cooled seats right there if those were actual buttons. Those are reserved for the premium model, which is a step above the Essence. But honestly, I wouldn't use them. I hate air conditioning. But I do have 3-stage heated seats, and I will definitely take that, especially here in the winters, because I am always cold. But for the most part, it is a dual zone automatic climate setup where you got your driver and your passengers separate climate zones. My one complaint about the climate panel here is you do have a separate button to take you into the display for more functions, like where is the air going to flow, which vents do you want selected, how heavy do you want the AC to run, because evidently, because this is the hybrid, there's an eco mode for the AC. So do you want it on max, eco, or off? You have to go into the display here to change that. I do not like that, especially considering we got 2 buttons here. Why can't we replace those cooled seat buttons with AC controls right there? But they didn't do it. Right above, we have some media buttons as well as our controls for the display. By the way, let's take a listen to the sound system in this thing. Sounds great, doesn't it? Then we come up here to the main screen where we discuss Buick's IntelliLink system, which for the most part, it's fairly simple. It's easy to use. And in terms of feature set, it's got basically everything you need and nothing that you don't, including, well, your AM, FM radio, as well as other sources. It's got your phone app. This model also has the built-in navigation system, which I've never seen on this low trim of a vehicle. And it also has one of my favorite features on any other car, and I am so mad that GM is trying to ditch this: Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So those are some standard things that you'll see within the infotainment system. However, because this is the hybrid, this also has an extra application that you won't see on the regular V6 models. That being an energy graph. There's actually an energy application that will actually show you whether the hybrid system is pulling energy out of the battery pack or if it's actually putting energy back in via regen braking. And then there's also a graph that will show you a little history on how efficiently you've been driving. As you can see, I don't drive that efficiently, but I will say this is a massive improvement over Red Fox. Then we come to the glove box here, and the glove box is actually rather interesting, and that's because there's a shelf inside of it. It's not just your standard box. There's actually a shelf inside, and from the looks of it, it appears to be removable, but I haven't successfully removed it just yet. But it is dampened and lined with felt, so that's a nice glove box. And then of course we have to go over some other standard things in here, like the lighting in here is actually full LED this time. And then you also have your HomeLink buttons here to control your garage doors if you have any that actually work. I don't know why, but I have never gotten the HomeLink buttons to ever work with anything. And now we get to the back seat of the Buick LaCrosse, and this is where Buick is absolutely famous. Buick is very well known for their very spacious and roomy back seats. You wonder why their sedans are so freaking long? This is why. All of that length goes towards the back seat. There is so much room in here. This is me sitting behind myself. I'm 5'8", so I'm fairly short. And this is me behind myself. I got at least a foot of room between my knees and the seat. But say someone happens to have even longer legs than mine in either the driver's seat or the passenger seat. Well, guess what? This seat is slid all the way back. And if I adjust myself to over here, I still got plenty of legroom. There's like 2-3 inches of legroom left. And this is the passenger seat slid all the way back. This is what Buick is famous for, guys. It's the roomy back seats. That's why their sedans are so freaking long. But now with the front seat out of the way, we can actually discuss the rest of the features here in the back seat, because this is a pretty nice back seat, if I'm being honest. We got speakers in the door here. There's door pockets here, which can't say the same about my last car, and you can't say the same about every car basically, but there's door pockets here with built-in water bottle holders. The windows are automatic down. They're not auto up, but the windows back here are at least automatic down. And the materials back here, they're also still relatively nice. You got the same exact materials as you do up front on the top of the door, these soft touch plastics here with that fake wood and real aluminum trim. Geez, that feels so nice and so cold to the touch. Then as you get further down, you get more leather, and this just feels so nice. The seats are angled a little too forward for my taste, but for the most part, the seats are angled fairly nicely. There's actually adjustable headrests up here, so if you happen to be a taller passenger and the headrest is too low, have no fear, because the headrests are adjustable. The back seat also has a center folding armrest with 2 cup holders here, and I hear that supposedly if you opt for the premium and Avenir models, they add a storage bin in here. I don't understand why they made 2 completely separate armrests. That's just weird in my opinion, but this is your armrest. And in terms of other features in here, we've got map pockets in both front seats. We have air vents that face you. No climate controls for the rear or rear heated seats. Something that I kind of would like to see, especially on the very highest end models, because they're not even available on the highest end models. At least we got rear air vents, something that Buick generally doesn't really skimp on that much. And also below that, we have a 12-volt outlet, and if you opt for the premium or Avenir models, they'll actually put in a 110 AC outlet right next to it. But we're still not done talking about the back seat. We got one more thing to talk about, and it's the middle seat. Obviously, you can fit 5 people in this car comfortably, I'd say. There is a hump in the center here that's fairly sizable, actually. I'm pretty sure that's for the optional all-wheel drive that's available on premium and Avenir models. We have more LED illumination along with your assist grip and coat hook, which is nice. And then we gotta talk about folding down the seats. These seats are able to be folded 60 60-40 split, which basically means you can either fold down one seat and gain trunk access and still have room for 2 people, or you can fold down the other seat and then you gain trunk access and room for 1 person back here. But there's actually a bit of an interesting issue that actually Buick was smart enough to think of. When you fold down this seat here, the one that has the center seat, you might notice it's taking the seat belt with it. That's not really convenient when you're carrying cargo and such, but Buick has thought of an interesting solution to this. All you have to do is take out your key. Literally, there's a built-in key into the key fob here. All you have to do is pull that out, stick this into this little latch here, and boom, the seat belt folds right off. But there you go. Your seat belt's disconnected. You don't have to worry about that anymore. All right, time to go test drive the 2019 Buick LaCrosse. Oh yeah, did I mention that this has a backup camera with trajectory lines? Makes backing this thing up so much easier, especially because I think the rearward visibility out of this is worse than Red Fox. All right, so now that we're on the road, let's do a quick 0 to 60 test, see what we get. Ooh. That hybrid was pulling. We actually had some tire squeal right there. Despite that, everyone likes to say Buicks are grandma's vehicle. They're slow, they're sluggish, they're just supposed to be more comfort oriented. There's no sportiness to the driving dynamics. You know what, everyone? I'm going to have to disagree with that, even though that I am driving the most grandma-like version of the LaCrosse available. This is the hybrid model. This is not going to have as much power as the V6 option that's available. But this thing actually gets up and goes. This thing scurries. Like, there was tire squeal back there when I just did that acceleration test. I don't know how Buick did it, but they absolutely tuned the system to work well. Taking a little corner here. Yeah, quite often you'll get in a hybrid, and too often the systems just are not calibrated well to work with each other. The engine and the electric motor, they're kind of not working together to build power at the same time. But this, Buick did such an amazing job engineering the seamlessness between the electric motor and the engine. It works so well. This thing was just ready to go. Now, I'm going to see what it's like when it comes to trying to build power. Well, ooh, maybe not. Yep, that'd be the police. So let's see how this thing builds power from mid-gear. Okay, so yeah, there was definitely a delay there. That's when you may notice Buick's refinement in terms of trying to make the whole vehicle act smooth. And another thing too, because this is the hybrid and it's definitely geared more towards efficiency, this thing does not generally like to give up its tall gears in the transmission. The transmission, I have to say, shifts very smoothly. I've only recalled feeling it once, but it was so minor to the point where I can't complain. Buick did such a great job integrating this 9-speed automatic into the transmission. It's great. It's tuned very nicely. Ooh, turkey! Now, in terms of the brakes, this does have regen braking, and this is a bit of the weird part that I'm still trying to get used to. I can feel the difference between friction brakes and regen. It's just, they engage at some of the most weird times, and it's just so weird. And another thing I want to point out too, right now the engine is currently shut off due to this thing's auto start-stop function when you pull up to an intersection, and that's because it helps save fuel. You're just sitting here doing nothing. So why have the engine work? Now, some people would get annoyed at something like this and wish that there was an off button. There is no button to defeat the system. Well, actually, I did find a trick. If you want to defeat the system, turn on the air conditioning. The engine will not stop if the air conditioning is on. But for the most part, this works really great. It is so smooth compared to when I just stopped. I didn't even notice the engine shut off until I actually looked at the tachometer, where there's a dedicated position in the needle to display that the engine is stopped at the moment. And the second I take my foot off the brake, starts right up. You didn't even feel it. It is so hard to tell that system is in action. So despite that, yeah, some people wish there was an off button. I personally don't. It does a great job saving fuel, and it is so seamless, it doesn't bother me a bit. Well, now if my map were to load here, you might be able to see that we are now about to hit some twisty back roads here, and that's because, well, I always come down this way to do a handling test. So let's see just how this LaCrosse handles on these back roads. Oh yeah, this is doing okay. It's not sporty. There's definitely a lot of body lean. You can feel the weight. You can just feel the weight every time you lean into a corner. For the most part, this is doable. Like, I'm going the speed limit down this road. Yes, you can actually go this fast down this road. As you can see, the car here is just taking it. It's okay with it. Yeah, the body roll's heavy, but, well, that's because this is more comfort oriented. You can definitely feel the weight when you toss it. It's not a fan of doing that. Though I will say this should be better than the previous generation LaCrosse, because Buick loved to advertise when the third gen, this generation, came out. It's 300 pounds lighter compared to the previous generation LaCrosse, and they say that it makes such a big difference in the driving dynamics in terms of acceleration and such, but also helps with fuel economy, because the lighter the car, the less energy required to get that vehicle moving. Yeah, I have to say, despite that, I do believe this is bigger than my last car. It doesn't feel like it. It only feels heavier once you actually get into the corners like we are about to hit right now. Yep, there's that lean right there. You definitely have to slow down for these corners, especially. Well, that's given with any car. You actually have to slow down to about 40 miles an hour to be safe around these corners. But in general, the car's okay at handling back roads, and it's definitely not entirely comfort oriented. You can have just a little bit of fun in this. I can feel the chassis kind of wants to play. It wants to have a little more fun than what Buick has tuned it to do. But of course, this is a more comfort oriented vehicle, and I'm not going to dock it too much for that, because actually I want a more comfort oriented vehicle, because that's what my passengers really care about. And there's a cop sitting back there. There's a speed trap right there. I should probably let them know about. Again, that auto start-stop system is so great. But yeah, for the most part, this thing just cruises, and it is so smooth. That's what Buick really designed this car to do. That's one thing that I really needed in my next car, because let's just say Red Fox had basically no suspension, and my road is absolute garbage at the moment. There are so many bumps, so many potholes, and this thing just soaks them up like it's not even an issue. I really enjoy driving this car. I will say the handling is a very so slight downgrade, but it's not really that big of a downgrade, because I don't typically drive the car in that sporty of a manner. Typically, I'm just trying to cruise along, go with the flow of traffic, and also keep my passengers comfortable as well. And I have to say that Buick did a really great job in terms of tuning the car in that aspect. So now we're going to get to the point where I'm going to discuss a couple details about this car, and it being my car. As you guys know, I name all of my cars, and so far I haven't told you it yet. So here, I'm finally going to reveal the name of this car to you guys. The name of this car is Stardust. Most of the time I get my inspiration from just looking at the color of the paint. I kept thinking of stars every single time I looked up the color of this paint, and I just thought of Stardust. So that was basically how I came up with the name for this car. Now, in the beginning of this video, I did allude to how this was supposed to be a holdover car, but genuinely, there's so much about this car that I actually like. I mean, there's only a few minor complaints I have, but obviously they're minor enough to the point where I still ended up buying the car anyways. But there's still a couple things about this car that I wish it had. Like, for example, sunroof. I really want a sunroof in my car. It's not to open it up and let the wind in, it's to let the light in. And especially when I have a black interior. I'm not generally a fan of black interiors for this reason. It's because it makes the car interior so much darker. Having a sunroof would really help just brighten up the cabin, but unfortunately that is not an option that I have on this vehicle. It is optional, I believe, on all LaCrosse models, but this vehicle does not have that option, unfortunately. And also, yeah, it has the black interior, which means it darkens it up, especially at night. This car gets very dark at night. And then, of course, there's the styling and the lights problem that I have in the rear, and the fuel tank being on the wrong side of the vehicle. But for the most part, I'm just not letting that bother me that much. But yeah, despite those minor gripes that I have with the car, I still ended up buying it. I paid roughly, well, I'm in the process of financing, actually, so I put a down payment of $2,000 on this as of right now, and oh geez, traffic is so busy. So in total, I'm about to pay roughly $25,000 for this car, which, yeah, a Model 3 you can now get for roughly $35,000. That's like another $10,000 away. So, like, why didn't I buy the Model 3 then? Pay just will increase the financing bills and such. Well, the reason for that is because in general, financing the car is not the only expenses I have to worry about, and it's insurance. Insurance has gone up really high for me now because, well, this is a 2019 car compared to a 2007 that I used to be driving. But also because I'm financing this vehicle, I have to have full coverage. So yeah, now my insurance has gone up from $200 every 6 months to approximately now $700 every 6 months. That sounds about right. Oh yeah, plus a $500 deductible for if I ever need to make a claim and such. So yeah, that's another factor to consider. And electric vehicles have a much more expensive insurance rate compared to standard gas vehicles. Now, yeah, this is a hybrid, so I'm pretty sure this also didn't help the insurance rate. So, but for the most part, yeah, that's another factor that I had to consider, and I just cannot afford a Tesla at this point. And that $35,000 thing I'm talking about, that's if you get the base model, and that's after the federal tax credit and such, which now qualifies for the full tax credit, evidently. I'm not planning on getting the base model when I get the Tesla. I have to go long range for a particular reason. It's because I've got to make a stretch in the winter where there is no superchargers in between. So I do actually need the range and the energy and the battery capacity. That, and also I'm very particular about the way my vehicle is designed, and I have to get the blue paint because I hate neutral colors, and also white does not go well with the snow, and I much rather the white interior than the black interior. So because of that, it results in me spending a lot more money than what's available in the base model. And that is basically why I ended up buying this car. It's because Red Fox was basically done and I needed to get a holdover vehicle for the time being. Yeah, I could have probably bought something that's not as expensive as this, but from the sounds of it, even after driving this and reviewing this, I think I'm going to end up keeping this car for quite a while because there's so much about this that I love. And yeah, this isn't the highest end version of it. There's more expensive models, but it's just, this is the car with everything I need. Nothing that I don't. I mean, okay, yeah, there's still a few things in here that I probably don't need, but still, I am so much happier that I am driving this car and not Red Fox anymore. I'm glad to have purchased Stardust, and I hope that Stardust remains in my ownership for quite a while. Alright, so now that we basically finished up the test drive and my other thoughts on this vehicle itself, let's get back home and put this vehicle on the carboard. Starting off under the hood, the Buick LaCrosse's hybrid system produces a total power of 194 horsepower and 187 pound-feet of torque, which is good enough to give it a 4 out of 10 for the power score. In terms of transmission, I kept saying throughout this video it had a 9-speed automatic, but it turns out I was very incorrect. It actually has a 6-speed automatic. The 9-speed is reserved for the V6. As a result, I have to give it a 6 out of 10. In terms of drivetrain, there is an all-wheel drive option available, but it's only for the V6 model on basically the top premium and Avenir trims, and as a result, it gets a 4 out of 10. 0 to 60 is done in about 7.5 seconds, which gets it a 6 out of 10. And in terms of fuel economy, this is where the hybrid absolutely shines with a 25 city and 35 highway fuel economy ratings. It deserves an 8 out of 10, bringing a total under the hood score of 28 out of 50. Next up, we have the weekend categories. Starting off with styling, this is one sleek and handsome car, and despite that it's ruined by the rear, I gotta still give it a 6 out of 10. It's a good looking car. Visibility, to my surprise, is better than I expected. I could actually see better out the windows in terms of the windshield and the side windows. The mirrors may be a tad small, and the back window always leaves a lot to be desired, but the backup camera certainly helps, and the blind spot monitoring that my model has also really helps. It gets a 5 out of 10. Handling is not this car's strong suit, however, because it's more intended to be comfort focused. I'd give it a 4 out of 10 if I'm being honest. Fun factor, this is not supposed to be a fun car, and I am giving it a 3 out of 10 in this category. And in terms of cool factor, well, Buick stopped making their sedans for a reason. It's because, for the most part, people didn't consider them cool, so I gotta give it a 1 out of 10, bringing the total weekend score to 19 out of 50. Finally, we have the daily categories. Starting off with features, this thing is not as equipped as some of the most expensive versions of this, but for the most part, it's got quite a few decent features that can keep any average Joe happy, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Comfort is a real strong suit. That is the point of this car car to begin with, so I gotta give it a 7 out of 10. Next up is quality. For the most part, materials aren't exactly the best compared to most of its luxury competition due to some hard plastics that you'll find in the lower bits of the cabin. But for the most part, the fit and finish is great, and the areas that you're most likely going to touch, they're soft and they feel good for the most part. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Practicality measures livability with the car, and well, let me think. Never needing to pull the key out of your pocket to actually get the vehicle running and unlocked. The button on the trunk certainly helps with that too. And then also the impressive fuel economy, the rear seat room, the storage. Yeah, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. This is one practical vehicle. And finally, value. These things may have lost a lot of value compared to their original retail price, but that's because Buick killed off their sedans, and many people don't generally see them as desirable vehicles, which is, in my opinion, a total shame. And as a result, the prices have definitely slipped to something lower and something more affordable, to the point where even I was able to buy one. It gets a 7 out of 10 in regards to that, bringing the total daily score to 33 out of 50, which gives us a grand total of 80 out of 150, the best sedan I have on the cardboard at this point. If you take a look in the trucks category, that Chevy Colorado I reviewed technically has a higher grand total score than the Buick LaCrosse at 81 compared to 80, but these are two completely different categories. There's a reason why I separate the sheets. And there you have it. This is my new car. I absolutely love it, and I can't tell you how much I am looking forward for the adventures in that car to come. All right, thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. My name is Alpha DeWolf, Random Alpha, signing out. And now we get to the third row of the Buick LaCrosse, and I gotta say, this is what Buick is absolutely... I did not say that right. Why did I say third row? There's only 2 rows in this vehicle.